The story opens with a group of girls fawning over Kuchinashi, praising her stunning performance during yesterday's volleyball match. She smiles and thanks them, basking in the attention. However, the celebration is cut short when a male student storms in, shouting about public disorder. It is Kiritsu, the uptight member of the Public Morals Committee. The girls immediately turn hostile, jeering at Kiritsu and calling him an overly sensitive public morals officer. Kuchinashi raises a hand to stop them, but only so she can deliver her own threat. She coldly warns him that if he doesn't stop his annoying wailing, he might find himself expelled by her grandfather, the school principal. Kiritsu mutters about abusing her power as the principal's granddaughter, but refuses to back down, insisting that her group is blocking the hallway. Nearby male students whisper about the standoff. They note that Kuchinashi, known as the man-hater prince, usually expels any student who disrupts without mercy. They express surprise that Kiritsu hasn't been punished yet, though they crudely joke that anyone would be distracted by her appearance. Kiritsu blows his whistle, finally managing to disperse the crowd and restore order. Kuchinashi glares at him, fuming internally. She hates him not just for his conceited demeanor, but because he consistently beats her in test scores. She angrily thinks about how he is always on top of her academically. Her mind immediately twists the phrase into an awkward, embarrassing thought. She flushes red, denying it, and resolves to erase him from the school in terms of school competition, not personally, to stop the annoyance. Later that evening, Kiritsu is alone in a classroom working on a report. Kuchinashi enters and approaches him from behind, noting his diligence with a sarcastic tone. He is annoyed by the interruption, but she pulls a chair right next to him. Her plan is simple. Since they are alone and the security camera is recording, she will trick him into breaking a school rule. If he does, she can use the footage to get him expelled. She invades his personal space slightly, coughing to get his attention. Kiritsu, focused on his typing, just complains that she is in the way. Frustrated that he isn't reacting, Kuchinashi attempts another tactic. She deliberately messes with her uniform, hoping to provoke him into breaking a rule, but instead of getting flustered, Kiritsu is outraged by the dress code violation. Calling her reckless, he shouts at her not to move and pulls out a sewing kit from his bag, determined to fix the uniform immediately. Kuchinashi is baffled. She expected him to react with panic, not responsibility. He threads a needle and leans in close, too close for her comfort. Kuchinashi freezes, her heart racing. Although she intended to make him react, she is the one caught off guard as he meticulously sews the buttons back on. The proximity and his unexpected competence leave her completely flustered. Finally, Kiritsu snaps the thread, finishing the job. He packs up his things, mentioning he has a part-time job at an abacus class to get to. Before leaving, he drops a bombshell. He knows about the rumors that she tries to trick students into breaking rules. He declares firmly that he will not fall for such tactics and swears that he shall not break any rules himself. He walks out, leaving Kuchinashi alone in the classroom. She sits there trembling, her face burning hot. Rather than being angry that her plan failed, she realizes with shock that his integrity has sparked a strange new admiration within her. The next day, Kuchinashi is at morning volleyball training. The other girls cheer for her enthusiastically, admiring her skill. She smiles politely, but is distracted. Even during practice, if she loses focus for a split second, her mind flashes back to the incident with Kiritsu checking her uniform, making her uneasy. Later, while walking through the hallway, she battles her internal conflict. Part of her wants to avoid Kiritsu out of embarrassment, but she knows she must execute her next plan. Her thoughts are consumed by him, which frustrates her. She resolves to trick him into catching her breaking a rule, hoping to use the evidence to demonstrate consequences if someone were to ignore school regulations. A male classmate, Chiharu, approaches and greets her. He notices a leaf on her shoulder and brushes it off casually, complimenting her on her morning practice. Kuchinashi accepts the gesture, but notes to herself that it doesn't affect her emotionally. If anything, it is mildly annoying. Suddenly, Kiritsu appears, shouting, "Halt!" Kuchinashi twitches, panicked that he has found her so soon when she isn't mentally prepared. However, Kiritsu completely ignores her. He storms past her and confronts Chiharu, shouting that the boy is violating the uniform rules. He demands to know why Chiharu isn't wearing his uniform jacket. The boy casually claims he threw it away because it looked bad on him. Outraged, Kiritsu orders him to write a reflection paper immediately. Chiharu runs off, and Kiritsu chases him. Kuchinashi is left standing alone, fuming that he ignored her. Her breath hitches, and she renews her determination to win against him in school rule enforcement. Later, Kuchinashi puts her plan into motion while taking out the trash. She approaches Kiritsu, who is also on trash duty. She had intentionally rolled her skirt higher than usual to appear in violation of regulations, hoping to test his diligence. When he notices, he is shocked by the apparent uniform violation. Internally, she prepares for victory. She has set up a hidden camera to record him correcting her, hoping it will look like a strict enforcement scenario. She challenges him, expecting him to be flustered. Instead, Kiritsu shouts that her skirt does not comply with regulations and orders her to adjust it immediately. Kuchinashi presses him, asking him to clarify exactly what is wrong, hoping to trick him into making a casual remark. When she laughs and agrees, thinking she has won, he pulls out a measuring tape. She is stunned. Kiritsu kneels down, not for any improper reason, but to measure the distance from the hem to her knee. He is precise, professional, and careful. He announces that her skirt is above regulation length and explains that if influential students break rules, others may imitate them, causing chaos in school discipline. Kuchinashi is flustered by his directness, but notes that he is only concerned with rules. Kiritsu asks if she understands the importance of following the uniform code. She calmly explains that she is wearing gym bloomers underneath for practical reasons. He acknowledges it but emphasizes that the skirt length must still be corrected. Desperate to keep him engaged for her recording, Kuchinashi argues that the rule stating the skirt must reach the knees is vague. She challenges him to demonstrate the proper length. Kiritsu accepts. He carefully unrolls the waistband to adjust it to the proper regulation length. Throughout the process, she is tense, but the interaction remains entirely about compliance with school rules. When he finishes, he asks if she is satisfied. Kuchinashi, still overwhelmed by the focus and precision, stammers a polite thank you. Kiritsu turns to leave, stating clearly that he only handled the skirt to enforce school rules and did not touch her inappropriately. Alone, Kuchinashi quickly recovers her confidence, believing that her camera footage will show him diligently enforcing the uniform rules. Eager to review the recording, she retrieves the camera. However, her triumph turns to annoyance when she realizes that a trash can had blocked the lens, leaving her with no useful footage. The next day, Kuchinashi checks the exam results board and is dismayed to see Kiritsu ranked first again. She panics, knowing that if her grandmother, the principal, finds out she isn't at the top, there will be trouble. Convinced it is all his fault, she decides she must erase him immediately. However, she realizes her previous improvised plans failed, so she decides to gather data first to ensure her next scheme succeeds. She heads to the clubroom where other girls are complaining about Kiritsu, calling him a pervert for measuring their skirts just as he did to her. She is surprised to hear he does this to everyone. Next, she interrogates the homeroom teacher, hoping to find dirt on him. However, the teacher simply praises him as an exemplary student who takes his disciplinary duties very seriously. Kuchinashi is frustrated that he seems to have no official weaknesses. Desperate, she approaches Chiharu, knowing the boy is often seen with Kiritsu. She asks him for the rival's weakness. Chiharu tries to dodge the question, claiming they aren't actually friends. However, her expression darkens so terrifyingly that he quickly caves. He speculates that, like any guy, Kiritsu must be weak against the girl he likes. Kuchinashi leaves, pondering this new information. She wonders what kind of girl he prefers and worries that he might never let his guard down around her if she isn't his type. Suddenly, Kiritsu walks out of a door right in front of her. She curses her luck. She has no camera prepared. He glares at her, asking if she is doing anything to ruin public morals. She denies it. He attempts to storm past her, but trips over his own feet and crashes to the ground, his glasses flying off. Kuchinashi realizes immediately that his poor eyesight is a major weakness. She sits down, planning to mess with him while his vision is impaired. However, in his panic to find his glasses, Kiritsu crawls blindly and accidentally bumps into her. She is startled but thinks quickly, if she can guide him under a surveillance camera like this, it would look like a harmless accident caught on tape. Squinting through his blurry vision, he realizes who is nearby. He shouts, accusing her of tripping him on purpose. She indignantly points out that he fell and bumped into her completely on his own. Realizing the situation, Kiritsu scrambles off her, miraculously finds his glasses, and yells for her to go home before running away. Kuchinashi is left sitting on the ground, confused and flustered. She realizes he didn't even notice what happened because he couldn't see. She feels embarrassed for overthinking the situation. Meanwhile, Kiritsu is out of breath as he walks away. He curses her for being underhanded by wearing her volleyball uniform. It turns out the uniform is his greatest distraction. He was so startled by the unexpected encounter that he tripped in the first place. He tries to suppress the memory of what just happened, just relieved to have his glasses back. The next day, Kuchinashi visits the school nurse, seeking advice. The nurse is surprised to see such a rare visitor and asks if she was injured during training. Kuchinashi denies it, claiming instead that she feels unusually tense and restless. She struggles to explain, describing how her body feels hot and agitated, especially when thoughts of a certain classmate randomly pop into her head. She hastily clarifies that she dislikes being distracted, yet these thoughts seem to trigger her uneasy state. The nurse smiles knowingly and suggests it's just normal stress and overthinking. Kuchinashi denies it, insisting she isn't worried about anything in particular. The nurse advises her to separate her anxiety from her physical symptoms and recommends simple relaxation techniques like deep breathing or light stretching. Shocked by the simplicity of the advice, Kuchinashi leaves the infirmary, muttering to herself that it's all Kiritsu's fault for making her so flustered. Just then, she spots him inside a craft room. Determined to test her nerves, she checks for surveillance cameras and confirms the hallway is empty. She composes herself and enters, playfully grabbing a nearby hose. In an attempt to splash water near her feet for a harmless prank, she accidentally soaks Kiritsu as well. He shouts that the water is cold, his glasses completely fogged up. Kuchinashi panics, realizing his vision is compromised again. He scolds her for causing trouble and starts wiping his glasses. Kuchinashi thinks he is overreacting to her playful prank. Once he can see again, he complains about catching a chill and starts adjusting his wet shirt. She watches nervously, hoping the mishap hasn't caused too much chaos. She collapses to the floor, defeated. Kiritsu notices the mess and tells her to clean it up. She snaps back, blaming the slippery floor, which confuses him. They both start wiping the floor, accidentally bumping into each other and creating a comically chaotic struggle. Kuchinashi tumbles forward, but quickly regains her balance. She realizes the situation looks awkward, but quickly pivots, making sure neither of them actually collides. Feigning a minor stumble, she asks for help regaining her footing. Kiritsu, cautious, uses a nearby clay figure to help steady her without touching her directly. Kuchinashi is baffled by his carefulness, but finally manages to stand upright. She runs off, forgetting her pretend stumble, while Kiritsu calls after her, noting that she seems perfectly fine. She rushes straight back to the infirmary, checking her temperature frantically, desperate to prove to the nurse that her flushed face and racing heart are just symptoms of stress, not anything serious. The nurse, unfazed, simply asks why she's dripping wet. Kuchinashi groans, realizing she can't even explain the water mishap without looking ridiculous. That evening, Kuchinashi is at her home, a grand estate located right behind the prestigious Tenimuho Academy. She locks her bedroom door and sits in front of a handcrafted stone figurine. She stares at it, remembering the incident where Kiritsu used a similar object to push her away. She blames Kiritsu entirely for her confusion, and resolves to come up with a scheme so watertight that he will have no choice but to break his rules. The next morning, Kiritsu arrives at school early, finding the empty classroom invigorating. However, his mood sours when he finds a challenge letter on his desk. The note, signed by Kuchinashi, demands that he come to the gym storage room alone after school. He crushes the paper in his hand, annoyed that she arrived even earlier than him, just to leave a note that disrupts public morals. After school, Kiritsu goes to the storage room as requested. He enters shouting complaints, but Kuchinashi pops out from behind a shelf and asks him to close the door. He complies but immediately declares that he has no idea what she is planning and that he still won't lay a finger on her. She smirks and asks him to repeat that after taking a better look. He turns and realizes she is sitting on the floor, completely tied up in ropes. She commands him to untie her. In reality, she tied herself up, hoping to force a situation where he has to physically assist her to release the ropes, which she can then misrepresent as misconduct. Kiritsu is appalled by her perverse attire and refuses to help directly. Instead, he turns to leave, stating he will fetch a teacher. Kuchinashi panics. If a teacher sees herself bound in a storage closet, she will look like a complete idiot. She taunts him, calling him a coward to goad him into staying. He counters that he will fetch a female teacher to preserve propriety. He tries to open the door, but it won't budge. Someone passing by must have noticed the unlocked door and locked it from the outside out of habit. Kuchinashi, seizing the opportunity, claims she planned this, a lie, and jokes that the door won't open unless he solves the knot puzzle first. Kiritsu ignores her logic and checks for his phone. However, adhering strictly to school rules, his device is turned off and buried deep in his bag. She reveals that her phone is in her pocket. She jokingly says he can only get it by carefully undoing the knots, turning it into a playful challenge. He refuses the bait. He decides he doesn't need the phone. If he can just untie the knots carefully, he can free her without making unnecessary contact. Kiritsu struggles with the ropes for a long time. Kuchinashi watches him sweat, thinking his resistance is futile, and eventually he will slip up. However, he eventually backs away, breathing heavily. He admits defeat, explaining that he cannot undo the tight knots because he keeps his fingernails extremely short to optimize his performance at his abacus class. She laughs triumphantly, convinced that now he has no choice but to tackle the challenge. Kiritsu immediately cuts her off, refusing to do something so ridiculous. Kuchinashi argues back, bringing up the incident in the hallway where he tripped over her, jokingly blaming him for causing chaos. He is outraged by the accusation, calling it baseless. He demands proof, and when she admits she has none, he decides the conversation is over. He declares that she is free to plot his expulsion, but he refuses to listen to lies. Stating that he won't waste any more time, he lies down on one of the gym mattresses and promptly falls asleep. Kuchinashi is left tied up on the cold floor, staring at him in disbelief. She cannot fathom how a teenage boy could sleep calmly in such a ridiculous situation. After a few minutes, she reaches her limit. The ropes are stinging her skin, the floor is freezing, and she is in pain. Desperate to get out, she drags herself across the floor toward him and shouts that she needs to use the toilet. This wakes Kiritsu instantly. However, instead of being flustered, he is purely concerned about hygiene and health. He shouts at her for not saying so sooner, lecturing her about the dangers of bladder inflammation. She snaps at him to stop lecturing and just grab her phone to call for help. He ignores her request again. He rummages around the room and finds a large chalk bucket. He offers it to her, earnestly suggesting she use it to do her business. He promises to look the other way. The sheer absurdity of the suggestion pushes her over the edge. Fueled by frustration and embarrassment, she flexes her muscles and snaps the ropes binding her with brute force. She immediately grabs her phone and calls her staff to come unlock the door ASAP. Kiritsu stares at her, impressed. He comments that he suspected she had crazy hidden strength ever since she popped the buttons off her shirt with just her muscles. She screams at him to shut up. Unfazed, Kiritsu looks at the locked door and asks if, with that kind of power, she could perhaps twist the lock off as well. Kiritsu walks through the classroom holding a book. Kuchinashi, sitting on a desk to block his path, stops him with a smile. She tells him it is perfect timing and jokingly claims she is an expert at checking for earwax. She suggests he sit nearby while she demonstrates proper hygiene techniques. Instead of accepting, he blows his whistle loudly, right into her ear. He shouts that checking someone's ear on school grounds is an affront to public morals. She bites her lip in frustration, thinking the stupid Four Eyes should appreciate her attention, yet he refuses to cooperate. Just then, her group of admirers approaches. They ask if something is going on between her and the annoying public morals representative. One girl worriedly asks if he is threatening or blackmailing her. Kuchinashi quickly calms them down, claiming she was just messing with him. Relieved, the girls offer a different theory. Kiritsu is so stubborn and strict with her because he actually has a crush on her. They reason that since she is so popular, he is acting out to grab her attention. Kuchinashi laughs off the suggestion externally, calling it silly. However, internally, she decides this theory is perfect. As she walks away, she convinces herself that he has fallen for her. She begins to fantasize about a scenario where they meet by a tree. He confesses his admiration, and she wins the battle by becoming his girlfriend, ensuring he will eventually act on his feelings. Determined to make the fantasy feel real and record it for evidence, she intercepts him in the hallway later that day. She asks for a moment of his time. Kiritsu, eager to get to his abacus class, tells her to speak up right there. Feigning shyness, she insists it is too embarrassing to say in the open. He laughs, baffled that she feels awkward now after her countless antics. Ignoring his teasing, she nudges him toward a specific tree where she has set up her recording equipment. Kuchinashi stands by the tree, trying to act confident. Kiritsu just looks impatient, waiting for her to speak. She tries to force out a fake confession, but her nervousness makes her break out in a sweat. Suddenly, a stray ball flies toward them. He steps in close to protect her, startling her slightly, but suggests they move to a safer location. She refuses to move, determined to keep the recording in frame. She tries to speak again, but the words get stuck in her throat. Flustered, she pivots to a teasing approach. She tells him that everyone says he admires her. She admits it is embarrassing, but allows that he is impressive in his own way. She concludes by teasing that if he insists so much, she might pretend to be his girlfriend, just to make him stop pestering her. Kiritsu stares at her in silence for a long moment. Finally, he adjusts his glasses and speaks coldly. He tells her that a person of her caliber shouldn't insult people face to face. She is confused and asks for his answer regarding the girlfriend suggestion. He delivers a clear rejection. He states that he dislikes people who belittle others and act like they can rule anyone they wish. She tries to smile, saying she thought he had potential as a student leader, but she was mistaken. He replies that he sees no opportunity here and walks away. Kuchinashi shouts after him that she dislikes him too, but later that night, she buries herself in her bed sheets, crying uncontrollably. In the morning, Kuchinashi emerges from her room looking visibly drained and sad. Her maid greets her and hands her the usual painkillers, noting that she wasn't able to sleep last night due to severe pain. The woman urges her to rest and take the day off, but Kuchinashi refuses. She insists she cannot stay home. If she misses school right after being rejected yesterday, Kiritsu will think she skipped out of shock and laugh at her. Determined to save face, she forces herself to go. At school, she constantly reminds herself that yesterday's rejection is a trivial matter and that he is completely insignificant and has no impact on her life. In the hallway, Kiritsu blows his whistle, ordering her group to stop blocking the path. The girls jeer at him, but Kuchinashi calmly tells them to ignore him and move elsewhere. Her followers ask to take photos of her in the garden to use as their phone wallpapers. She agrees, thinking she is handling the situation well. However, when the girls look at the photos, they are stunned by her appearance. They tell her she doesn't look okay at all. She excuses herself, claiming slight anemia, and asks them to delete the unflattering photos. As she climbs the stairs alone, the pain becomes unbearable. Cramps seize her abdomen, and she collapses against the wall, sliding down to the floor. She angrily blames that glasses-wearing nuisance for ruining her sleep and causing her stress, wondering how long he intends to keep stressing her out. Her consciousness fades. She wakes up in a hospital bed. Her maid is by her side, explaining that she is at the university hospital. She lost consciousness due to a combination of fatigue and sleep deprivation. The school nurse found her collapsed and called an ambulance. Kuchinashi feels pathetic for worrying everyone, but is relieved to be safe. Back at school, the nurse is on the phone receiving the update that Kuchinashi is awake. Just then, Kiritsu knocks and enters the infirmary. The woman tells him the good news that the patient is fine. He pretends to be indifferent, busying himself with clearing space on the bulletin board for the monthly moral news. The story flashes back to earlier in the corridor. After Kuchinashi walked away, Kiritsu had noticed she looked unwell. Overhearing her friends mention anemia, he grew concerned and went looking for her. He found her collapsed on the stairs, on the verge of falling further. He rushed to catch her, checked her breathing, and immediately piggybacked her all the way to the infirmary, struggling from the effort but refusing to stop. Bursting into the office, he shouted for the nurse to call an ambulance. Back in the present, the nurse praises him for his quick thinking and for staying by Kuchinashi's side until the ambulance arrived. She asks why he wants to keep his help a secret, suggesting the girl wouldn't resent him for saving her. He disagrees, convinced that she hates him so much she wants him expelled. He fears that if she finds out he touched her to carry her, she would make things very difficult for him socially. A few days later, Kuchinashi returns to school. Her admirers surround her, nearly crying with relief. She apologizes for worrying them. Just then, Kiritsu appears. Instead of his usual scolding, he notes that while blocking the hallway is against the rules, seeing someone who claims to be perfect collapse like that proves she isn't as invincible as she claims. Kuchinashi is furious at the insult. As he walks away, the other girls call him horrible, but unseen by them, Kiritsu smiles slightly, relieved to see her back to her usual fiery self. That afternoon, Kuchinashi sits with her group of admirers during lunch. The girls excitedly discuss the recent volleyball match, praising her as the only reason they won. However, she is completely zoned out. She is still unable to forget the video she accidentally watched the other day. Whenever her mind isn't occupied, she finds herself drifting to Kiritsu. She snaps out of it when the group calls her name, apologizing for being distracted. Hoping to get some data for her plans, she abruptly changes the subject and asks the table if any of them have kissed someone before. The girls are shocked by the sudden topic change, teasing her and asking if she has moves on a fan club member. Kuchinashi denies having a crush, insisting she is just curious about how a natural kiss happens. One girl admits she hasn't done it, but imagines it tastes like lemons. Thinking back to the biological articles she read, Kuchinashi counters with her own definition. The girls are grossed out, arguing that a kiss is about romantic tension, not just mechanics. They point out how strange this is. Usually, she spends her time talking about expelling creepy guys or suing people, so talking about romance is a massive shift. Realizing she is raising suspicion, Kuchinashi abruptly stands up, claiming she needs to grab documents from the clubroom, and leaves. Walking down the hallway, she justifies her curiosity. She tells herself she doesn't want to kiss anyone. This is purely a tactical maneuver to defeat Kiritsu. According to her online research, a sudden kiss is the ultimate attack. She reasons that even if he hates her, the clueless, bespectacled fool won't be able to resist if she initiates it. Her heart races as she plans to lure him in and record his loss of control on camera. By coincidence, she bumps into him right then. He is sitting alone on a secluded staircase, eating his lunch. She is startled, but quickly scans the area. She spots a security camera in the perfect position. Kuritsu is annoyed to see her, asking if she is there to bother him. He explains that this is his precious free time to eat, read, and take a nap. She smiles and sits right next to him. He immediately protests, shouting that nothing good ever happens when she gets close. He tells her to leave him alone. She refuses to budge. She feigns kindness, saying she thought it would be miserable for him to spend his lunch break all alone. He dryly replies that he has no need for her concern and prefers the solitude. Ignoring his rejection, she stays put, thinking she needs to find a way to lower his guard so she can execute her operation. She coughs dramatically, claiming she has an eyelash stuck in her right eye and cannot get it out. She asks him to take a look since she doesn't have a mirror. Kuritsu, concerned about a potential corneal injury, leans in to inspect it. Thinking he has taken the bait, she closes her eyes ready for the kiss. He immediately ruins the moment by shouting at her. He wonders how he is supposed to find the eyelash if she closes her eye. He forces her eyelids open to inspect the eyeball. She becomes overwhelmed by his face being so close to hers. Her heart races, and she realizes she can barely handle the eye contact, let alone a kiss. Panic sets in, and she pulls away abruptly, lying that the eyelash is out. Realizing a direct kiss is impossible for her right now, she pivots to plan B, an indirect kiss. She eyes his lunch and requests for a bite of his rice ball. Kuritsu refuses instantly. She pleads for just one bite, but he responds by shoving the entire remaining rice ball into his mouth at once. She is horrified, calling him a glutton for eating it all, just to spite her. He mumbles that he is just hungry and short on time. Undeterred, Kuchinashi spots the whistle hanging around his neck. She demands he hand it over. He clutches it protectively, asking if she plans to eat that too. She shouts that she just wants to blow it. She lunges for him, trying to grab the whistle. He pushes her away, shouting at her to unhand him. She keeps reaching, begging for it, but he refuses to let her touch even that, terrified of her germs. Fed up with her throwing a fit, Kuritsu packs up his bag to leave. She asks if he is running away, but then spots his open water bottle. Seeing one last chance, she grabs it and drains the entire contents in one go. He watches in disbelief as she drinks all of his tea. When she finishes, she hands back the empty bottle with a satisfied smile and a thank you. Kuritsu is furious that his drink is gone and calls her a thief who just shows up to steal people's stuff. Kuchinashi walks away blushing, convinced that he must be completely flustered by sharing a bottle. She laughs to herself, eager to review the security footage of her victory. However, when she checks the recording later, her triumph crumbles. The camera angle didn't capture any romantic tension. It simply recorded her bullying him and stealing his drink. Kuchinashi walks to the library, fuming about the upcoming exams. She blames Kuritsu for her inability to focus, but is determined to come out on top this time. She assumes she won't run into him since he usually works at his abacus class, but fate has other plans. While reaching for a book on a library shelf, she pulls it out only to find Kuritsu standing directly on the other side, looking through the gap. She is shocked, but Kuritsu completely ignores her and walks away without a word. Annoyed by the dismissal, she calls after him, telling him to go to work and leave, but he doesn't even acknowledge her presence. Later, Kuchinashi finds him studying at a desk. She decides on a change of plan. Instead of ignoring him, she will sit right next to him and distract him so much that he fails his exams. She glares at him, mentally promising to end his reign as the #1 student. However, since there are other students around, she cannot do anything too suspicious. She notices a couple nearby whispering and chatting closely while helping each other with problems. Inspired, she decides to try the sweet whisper technique. She leans in close to Kuritsu and whispers, asking for insight on a problem. He doesn't react at all. She realizes he is wearing earplugs. Frustrated, she pulls out one of his earplugs and demands help, but Kuritsu silently writes a dismissive note, takes it back, and resumes studying. She crushes the paper in anger, determined to break his concentration no matter what. She tries various distraction techniques she found online. She lightly taps his shoulder, pokes his arm, and even tries to get his attention in different ways. Kuritsu remains completely unresponsive, his concentration tempered by years of abacus training. He has shut out the outside world entirely. Kuchinashi, blushing from her own bold moves, feels embarrassed that she is the only one getting flustered. Desperate, she accidentally drops her eraser under the desk. Crouching down to retrieve it, she notices the couple at the next table sitting close together and quietly chatting while studying. Kuchinashi realizes this is the perfect hidden spot. She decides to use a bold move to distract him. She reaches toward his leg under the desk, expecting him to react. However, Kuritsu is deep in thought over a difficult math problem. His bad habit while thinking is tapping his foot rhythmically. As she reaches for him, his moving leg repeatedly hits her. She tries to persist, attempting to get closer to break his concentration, but she is losing the battle against his restless leg. Finally, Kiritsu solves the problem and decides to take a break. He stands up to stretch, only to look down and find Kuchinashi lying on the floor under the desk, looking completely disheveled and flushed. He asks what she is doing down there. Kuchinashi scrambles up, flustered. Kiritsu admits he saw her moving in the corner of his eye and knew she was trying to interrupt him, but his trained senses blocked her out. He begins to challenge her to an academic duel, but suddenly stops. He notices the couple nearby being overly affectionate in the library. Outraged, he shouts at the couple to refrain from such unsavory displays of affection in a holy place of learning. He scolds himself for losing situational awareness. Turning back to Kuchinashi, he misunderstands her behavior entirely. He apologizes, assuming she was down there trying to warn him about the couple's indecency, and he was too focused to notice. Kuchinashi rolls her eyes and tells him to forget it. Kiritsu, feeling guilty, insists on helping her with the math problem she mentioned earlier. She snaps that she understands it just fine, but Kiritsu looks at her paper and immediately points out her mistakes. He switches into tutor mode, explaining that the teacher often includes advanced questions from college entrance exams. He walks her through the solution step by step, mumbling rapidly about high probabilities and extra credit. A few weeks later, the midterm exam results are posted. Kiritsu is still ranked first. Kuchinashi grinds her teeth in annoyance. He walks up behind her and smugly notes that the exact problem he predicted appeared on the test. He asks if she managed to solve it. Kuchinashi snaps that of course she did. Kiritsu laughs, telling her she better be grateful. She refuses to thank him out loud, but inwardly, she acknowledges that thanks to his tutoring, she scored significantly higher in math than usual. Summer arrives, bringing a switch to summer uniforms. Kuchinashi walks through the school, receiving praise from other girls for how lovely she looks. However, her attention snaps when she overhears two students from the disciplinary committee gushing about Kiritsu. They whisper about how amazing he was this morning and how much they like him. She approaches them and asks to sit down. The girls are starstruck but welcome her. Kuchinashi confronts them directly, asking if they are in love with him. They immediately get fidgety and deny it. They clarify that they don't like him in a romantic way. Rather, they want to support him and Chiharu. Kuchinashi is confused. The girls lean in and whisper the secret. They believe Kiritsu and Chiharu are unusually close. She asks what they mean, and the girls excitedly explain their theory about the two having a special bond. They interpret his constant scolding and chasing of the other boy not as strictness, but as a form of unusual attention. They point out that he ignores almost all women, keeping conversations strictly duty-related, but goes beyond the call of duty when it comes to Chiharu. Kuchinashi realizes with a shock that this aligns with her own experience. He often ignores her only to go talk to the other boy. The girls conclude that Kiritsu likely has no interest in women at all. Just then, the subjects of their gossip appear. He has cornered Chiharu in the courtyard. The boy looks annoyed, thinking that everything turns weird whenever he runs into this guy. He tries to excuse his lack of a blazer by citing the summer uniform switch, but Kiritsu isn't having it. The fangirls hide behind a pillar to watch, squealing that the two are acting unusually close. Kuchinashi, watching from a distance, thinks it just looks like a standard scolding. However, Kiritsu suddenly steps into Chiharu's personal space. He checks his hair closely, accusing him of dyeing his hair a slightly lighter shade of blonde. Kuchinashi is stunned. Chiharu sits right in front of her in class, yet she never noticed the hair change. Kiritsu not only noticed a tiny detail, but is also paying close physical attention, something he avoids with her. Chiharu swats his hand away, complaining about his hair being ruined. Kiritsu doesn't stop there. He crouches down and inspects his socks closely. He shouts that the socks are from a flashy brand and violate regulations. Kuchinashi watches with rising jealousy and frustration. She fumes internally, wondering why the Four Eyes is getting overly involved with another guy when he is always on the defense with her. Kiritsu then points out the boy's open shirt collar, spotting a flashy t-shirt underneath. He demands Chiharu take it off right now and put on regulation gym clothes. The boy shouts back, calling him a dumbass and telling him to stop acting like his mom. As Kiritsu tries to force him to write a reflection paper, Chiharu makes a run for it, and the chase begins again. The fangirls swoon, while Kuchinashi is left seething over the closeness of the interaction. Chiharu manages to escape the scolding, running off while declaring he is going out. The fangirls watching from the shadows swoon, thrilled to have seen such an over-the-top confrontation. Kuchinashi, however, is visibly furious. The girls notice her anger and come up with a wild theory. They reason that she cannot allow her rival to experience unhindered love. They whisper a warning to her that interfering in true love brings bad karma, but she is already storming off. She intercepts Kiritsu, shouting at him to hold up. He turns around, annoyed, and tells her he doesn't have time for her. She accuses him of being way too passionate about Chiharu. He denies it, stating he is simply warning a student who dresses sloppily. She argues that he only notices minor details when it comes to that boy. He counters this immediately, claiming he notices minor changes about her as well. Kuchinashi freezes, her heart skipping a beat. She wonders if he noticed that her head is filled with thoughts of him. Instead, he points a finger at her hair and notes that she still has a hairpin in it from PE class. As she flusteredly pulls it out, he laughs, claiming victory for noticing something she didn't even realize herself. She shouts at him to stop changing the subject. She declares she knows who he is really in love with. He scoffs at the tomfoolery, insisting there is no such person. She drops the bomb. The person you love is Chiharu. Kiritsu reacts with immediate, vehement denial. She presses on, pointing out that he keeps grabbing and stopping Chiharu while rarely interacting with her physically. He explains logically. He has to grab the boy because he runs away. As for her, as a member of the disciplinary committee, he would never touch a female student inappropriately. She ignores his logic, insisting that their relationship is clearly more than just normal classmates. Kiritsu, baffled, asks what that means, and if it is an affront to public morality. Kuchinashi tries to explain using terms she barely understands, only making things more confusing. The eavesdropping fangirls cringe at her clumsy explanation. He rubs his temples, saying her foolishness makes his head hurt. She asks him directly, if he had to choose between liking or hating Chiharu, which would it be? He doesn't hesitate. He chooses hate, citing that the boy is a troublemaker who ignores warnings. Kuchinashi isn't satisfied. She demands to know why Chiharu gets special treatment then. Kiritsu corrects her again. Compared to that guy, he gives her much more special treatment. He explains that he keeps an extra pair of eyes on her constantly because she is such a problem. He walks away, leaving Kuchinashi to process this. She realizes that she is special to him, but only because he despises her enough to watch her like a hawk. She assumes this means he hates Chiharu but truly loathes her. She swears to get back at him. Meanwhile, the fangirls interpret the conversation differently. They excitedly whisper that hate is just another word for love in a romance story. They conclude that Kiritsu and Chiharu are basically a couple at this point. Thus, a baseless rumor spreads throughout the school. When our girl eventually asks Chiharu about it, he simply looks confused and wonders if this is some new kind of bullying. Kiritsu enters Kuchinashi's classroom. Her heart leaps, thinking he came specifically to see her. However, he walks past her desk to another student, handing over the monthly disciplinary report. He thanks the student and leaves without even glancing at her. Kuchinashi is furious at being ignored. Her friend notices her terrifying expression and asks why she is making such a scary face. She complains that the stupid fool ignored her. Her friend points out that if he has no business with her, he has no reason to talk to her. She adds that Kuchinashi acts like a bully or a thug whenever he is involved, despite being so nice to the girls. Kuchinashi grumbles that she will keep that in mind. Later, walking down the corridor, she dwells on Kiritsu's claim that he gives her special treatment. She feels like she is always the one initiating contact, while he constantly ignores her. As if to prove her point, he crosses her path again and keeps walking without a word. Annoyed and determined to force him to acknowledge her, Kuchinashi heads to the bathroom to hatch a plan. She recalls how he instantly noticed Chiharu wearing a non-regulation t-shirt under his uniform. She decides to test his sensors. She adjusts her usual layers under her uniform, wearing less than she normally does. She reasons that if he can spot an extra layer, he will surely notice the difference. She steps out of the bathroom, but her confidence immediately evaporates. Without her usual layers, she feels unusually self-conscious. When a girl stops her to fix a stray hair, she flinches. When a boy says bye to her, she assumes he is staring at her. She realizes that she is actually quite modest by nature. She even wears undergarments while sleeping, so walking around like this is making her paranoid. Terrified that the stupid Four Eyes might actually figure it out, she decides to abort the mission and head to her club. However, as she descends the stairs, she spots Kiritsu standing by a window, dusting chalkboard erasers. He turns and greets her, saying it is great timing. Feeling petty and anxious, she tries to ignore him and keep walking. He shouts at her not to ignore him. She snaps back, asking why he is talking to her all of a sudden. He bluntly states he has business with her. The mechanical eraser cleaner on the second floor is broken. Since her family essentially owns the school, he wants her to report it. Kuchinashi is exasperated that he only talks to her about maintenance issues. He explains he came to this secluded spot to dust the erasers manually so the chalk dust wouldn't bother others. He then peers at her closely, asking why she is acting so weird. He notes that she is blushing and sweating profusely. Kiritsu concludes that she must have caught a cold. Seizing the excuse to escape, she laughs nervously and agrees that she feels awful. He tells her she isn't as tough as she looks and orders her to go home before she infects others. She calls him inconsiderate for not offering care to a sick person, though he retorts that he has no obligation to nurse her. She turns to leave, muttering that talking to him makes her head hurt. Between the stress of her wardrobe experiment and the argument, she feels genuinely dizzy. She stumbles on the stairs, nearly falling. Kiritsu instinctively rushes forward and grabs her to steady her. For a split second, his hands briefly make contact with her back. He freezes, likely noticing something unusual about her uniform. He releases her abruptly, jumping back as if burned. Both of them turn bright red. Kuchinashi, mortified that he might have noticed, runs away immediately. He is left standing on the stairs, looking at his hands, completely flustered by what just happened. Following the incident on the stairs, Kiritsu is haunted by Kuchinashi's parting words about him being inconsiderate. He tells himself that such insults are nothing new from her, yet he can't shake the feeling that he messed up. He admits to himself that he didn't grab her to be mean. He genuinely thought she was falling and rushed to save her, but the resulting physical contact was awkward and inappropriate. The next morning, Kiritsu stands at the school gate with the disciplinary committee greeting students. However, he is completely zoned out. Hirayama, a male committee member, points out his unusual silence, noting that the representative is usually loud and commanding. Startled, Kiritsu suddenly shouts, "Good morning!" at an empty space where no one is walking. He apologizes, admitting he spaced out, which shocks Hirayama even more. The situation gets stranger when the female committee member points out that Chiharu just snuck past them with a group of girls, violating dress codes. Instead of giving chase, Kiritsu simply sighs and says, "I see, I will talk to him later." The committee is stunned. They ask if he has a fever, but he claims he is healthy. The girl whispers to Hirayama, urging him to probe for details, convinced this depression is related to a lover's quarrel with Chiharu. Hirayama doesn't care, but asks anyway to satisfy her. Kiritsu ignores them, lost in his own thoughts. Internally, he is agonizing over how to apologize to Kuchinashi. He assumes she stayed home sick due to the cold he diagnosed her with, which frustrates him because it delays his apology. He rehearses what to say in his head, struggling to find the right words. "I'm sorry for grabbing you like that," sounds like he had ill intentions. "It was an accident," sounds like an excuse. He decides he must simply apologize for hurting her, even if it means damaging his pride. Later, lying in bed, or perhaps daydreaming during a break, Kiritsu replays the moment of catching her. He realizes the moment felt strangely familiar. He recalls the time he tripped and fell on her in the hallway. He wonders if he handled that situation improperly back then too, confirming her accusations. He shakes his head, deciding now is not the time to overthink it. He needs to act. Walking to his classroom, he is surprised to see Kuchinashi laughing with a group of girls. He realizes she came to school after all and is trying to tough it out. He decides he cannot back down. He steels his nerves and approaches her group. He calls out her name, asking if he can have a moment. However, the second Kuchinashi sees him, she turns and sprints away at full speed. Her friends immediately turn on Kiritsu, shouting at him. They call him the disciplinary guy and yell that he sucks for chasing her away. They accuse him of always annoying her to the point where she doesn't even want to look at him. He tries to defend himself, saying he didn't do anything yet, but the girls drown him out. Defeated, Kiritsu walks away, muttering that he apparently doesn't even have the right to apologize. Meanwhile, Kuchinashi is hiding under the stairs, clutching her chest. She isn't angry, she is mortified. After the incident from yesterday, she feels too embarrassed to face him. She laments that even though she tried to avoid him, she ran right into him, reigniting her panic.